A massive 18-foot python slowly crushes the life from a wounded lion as death seems inevitable when suddenly a pack of hyenas emerges from the shadows. But instead of waiting to scavenge the remains, these unlikely heroes launch a coordinated attack on the giant serpent, risking their own lives to save their supposed enemy. What happens next shattered every assumption about predator rivalries and proved that compassion exists in the most unexpected places in the animal kingdom.
Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you.
But to understand how this extraordinary moment came to be, we have to go back just 12 hours earlier to the vast savannas of Tanzania's Ruaha National Park, where the ancient rhythms of predator and prey had been playing out undisturbed for millions of years. The golden grasslands stretched endlessly under the African sun, dotted with scattered acacia trees that provided precious shade in a landscape where survival depended on understanding the delicate balance between cooperation and competition. The morning had begun with the kind of pristine beauty that made Ruaha one of Africa's most spectacular wildlife sanctuaries. Herds of zebras and gazelles grazed peacefully in the distance, while elephants moved like gray mountains across the horizon, their presence commanding respect from every creature in their path. The air shimmered with heat waves that created an almost mystical quality to the landscape, where life and death decisions played out according to laws older than human memory. Dr. Amanda Foster, a wildlife behavioral researcher from the University of Cape Town, had positioned her observation team at a strategic location overlooking a watering hole that served as the social center for the region's diverse predator populations. Her 3-year study of interspecies relationships in large carnivores had already produced groundbreaking insights into the complex social dynamics that governed survival in one of Africa's harshest environments. The research site had been carefully chosen for its unique geographical features that created natural gathering points for multiple species. Underground springs fed a series of water pools that remained active even during the driest seasons, making this area crucial for the survival of lions, hyenas, leopards, and the countless prey species that sustain the ecosystem's intricate food web. Everything about this particular morning suggested another routine day of data collection, and the kind of pristine wilderness that existed in fewer and fewer places around the world. The weather patterns were typical for the dry season, the animal population showed healthy numbers and normal behaviors, and the research team's equipment was functioning perfectly to capture the intimate details of wild animal interactions that would help the world understand the complexity of African ecosystems. The morning's peaceful routine was broken by the arrival of two very different groups of predators, each representing opposing forces in the eternal struggle for dominance in the African wilderness. The first to appear was Django, a magnificent male lion whose golden mane and powerful frame marked him as one of the region's most successful hunters, despite recent signs that age and accumulated injuries were beginning to slow his legendary prowess. Django had ruled these territories for over 6 years, leading a pride that had successfully raised multiple generations of cubs while defending their hunting grounds against challengers and environmental threats. His distinctive dark-edged mane and battle-scarred flanks told the story of countless confrontations with rival males, territorial disputes, and the constant pressure of providing for his family in an increasingly competitive ecosystem. But time had begun to exact its toll on the aging Lion King. Recent hunting injuries had left him with a pronounced limp in his rear leg, while an infected wound on his shoulder had weakened his stamina and made sustained physical effort increasingly difficult. These vulnerabilities, invisible to casual observers but obvious to other predators, marked him as potentially vulnerable in a world where weakness was often a death sentence. 20 meters away, moving with the coordinated efficiency that made them one of Africa's most successful predator groups, came a clan of 7 spotted hyenas led by Kessie, a battle-tested matriarch whose intelligence and strategic thinking had made her group legendary among local researchers for their problem-solving abilities and complex social cooperation. Kessie's clan operated with a sophistication that challenged every stereotype about hyenas as mere scavengers or opportunistic followers.
Her pack included Jabari and Zuberi, two powerful males whose loyalty to the matriarch was absolute, Asha and Yota, younger females whose speed and agility made them perfect for coordinated hunting, and three adolescents whose energy and fearlessness provided the clan with reconnaissance capabilities that kept them informed about territorial changes and potential opportunities. What made this particular group extraordinary wasn't just their hunting success, but their documented history of behaviors that suggested emotional intelligence and moral reasoning that challenged scientific understanding of hyena cognition and social structures.
But lurking in the shadows of the watering hole's rocky outcroppings, an ancient predator had been watching both groups with the patient calculation of a creature that had perfected the art of ambush hunting over millions of years of evolution. Hidden among the sun-baked stones and twisted roots lay Temba, a massive African rock python whose 18-foot length and 200-pound bulk made him one of the most formidable apex predators in the entire ecosystem. African rock pythons are among the continent's most dangerous serpents, capable of killing prey as large as antelopes, young giraffes, and even weakened lions through their devastating constricting power. Unlike venomous snakes that rely on poison, pythons kill through pure muscular force, wrapping their victims in coils that tighten with each exhale until the heart stops beating and consciousness fades forever. Temba was particularly dangerous because of his advanced age and accumulated hunting experience. At over 20 years old, he had survived droughts, territorial conflicts, and countless encounters with other predators by developing a sophisticated understanding of animal behavior patterns and vulnerability indicators that allowed him to select targets with deadly precision. The massive serpent had been tracking Django's movements for several days, his primitive but effective intelligence recognizing that the injured lion represented an opportunity that might not come again. Temba's hunting strategy relied on patience and perfect timing, waiting for moments when potential prey was distracted, weakened, or separated from protective allies before launching attacks that were virtually impossible to escape. What made this particular situation especially dangerous was the python's positioning near the watering hole's edge, where the rocky terrain provided perfect camouflage while offering multiple escape routes if his ambush failed. His mottled brown and tan scales blended seamlessly with the sun-dappled stones, making him effectively invisible to animals focused on drinking or social interactions. The afternoon heat was working in Temba's favor, making both lions and hyenas sluggish and less alert to environmental threats. The watering hole's life-giving presence had created a false sense of security that masked the deadly reality of a predator whose killing efficiency had been refined over 2 decades of successful hunts in this unforgiving landscape. The stage was set for an encounter that would challenge every assumption about predator relationships and the capacity for unlikely alliances when survival hung in the balance. Completely unaware of the mortal danger coiled among the rocks above him, Django approached the watering hole with the careful movements of a predator whose recent injuries had taught him the painful lesson that survival required constant vigilance. His limp was more pronounced than usual, and the infected shoulder wound that had been troubling him for days was clearly affecting his mobility and alertness. The aging lion's positioning at the water's edge was catastrophically perfect for Temba's hunting strategy. Django's focus on drinking and cooling his fevered body meant that his legendary situational awareness was compromised at the exact moment when he needed it most. The combination of pain, thirst, and the midday heat had created a window of vulnerability that the patient python had been waiting for. Kessie's hyena clan maintained their respectful distance from the watering hole, following the ancient protocols that governed territorial boundaries between competing predator groups. Despite their superior numbers, they showed the kind of strategic patience that had made their species one of Africa's most successful carnivores. But Kessie's sharp eyes noticed details that others missed: Django's unusual vulnerability and the subtle signs of environmental disturbance that suggested hidden threats.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time.
So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
Dr. Foster's research team, positioned on a rocky outcrop nearly 300 meters away, observed the scene through high-powered telephoto lenses that captured every detail of the complex predator dynamics playing out below. Their attention was focused on documenting the behavioral patterns that govern water access among competing species, completely unaware that they were about to witness one of the most extraordinary events in African wildlife research. The temperature had reached its peak intensity, creating the kind of oppressive heat that forced most animals to seek shade and remain inactive until evening brought relief. This natural lethargy worked perfectly for Temba's ambush strategy, as both potential prey and potential witnesses were operating at reduced alertness levels that maximized his chances of success. As Django lowered his massive head to drink from the life-giving water, his wounded shoulder and injured leg placed him in the worst possible position to detect or escape from a serpentine attack. The stage was set for a confrontation that would test every assumption about survival, cooperation, and the bonds that sometimes form between the most unlikely allies in nature's brutal theater.
The attack erupted with the terrifying speed and precision of a natural disaster striking without warning. Temba launched himself from his rocky concealment like a living missile of scales and muscle, his massive coils unfolding with shocking velocity as 18 feet of apex predator descended upon the vulnerable lion with devastating force. Django's reaction time, compromised by pain and exhaustion, proved insufficient against an ambush that had been planned with predatory perfection. The python's first coil wrapped around the lion's midsection before he could fully comprehend what was happening, while Temba's enormous head positioned itself to prevent any escape attempts. The sound of the initial impact echoed across the savanna like a thunderclap that announced the beginning of a life-or-death struggle. The lion's roar of surprise and fury cut through the afternoon air, a sound so primal and desperate that it carried for miles across the grasslands. But Django's legendary strength, already weakened by injury and infection, seemed almost inadequate against the python's crushing power that tightened with methodical precision around his massive frame. Temba's strategy was working exactly as millions of years of evolution had designed it. Each time Django exhaled in his struggle to break free, the python's coils tightened incrementally, creating a hydraulic pressure system that would slowly but inevitably squeeze the life from even the most powerful prey. The serpent's muscular body was a living vice that responded to resistance by applying even greater crushing force. From their position 20 meters away, Kessie's hyena clan witnessed the unfolding disaster with what should have been opportunistic satisfaction. Traditional predator dynamics suggested they would simply wait for the python to complete its kill, then claim whatever remains the serpent couldn't consume. Hyenas were renowned for their pragmatic approach to survival, taking advantage of any situation that provided easy access to meat without unnecessary risk. But what happened next would shatter every assumption about interspecies relationships and challenge the very foundations of what scientists thought they knew about animal behavior, cooperation, and the capacity for moral reasoning in creatures whose intelligence had been consistently underestimated by human observers. The moment that would redefine wildlife research was about to unfold as 7 hyenas faced a choice that would test their species' reputation and reveal hidden depths of character.
What followed defied every law of nature and challenged the fundamental assumptions about predator behavior that had guided wildlife research for decades. Instead of positioning themselves to scavenge the remains of Django's inevitable death, Kessa's hyena clan made a decision that shocked Dr. Foster's research team and rewrote the textbooks on interspecies cooperation in the wild. Kessie issued a series of complex vocalizations that her clan immediately recognized as a coordinated attack signal.
But instead of targeting the struggling lion as their traditional rival, the hyenas launched themselves at Temba with the fury and precision of a military assault designed to save their supposed enemy from certain death. The attack was brilliant in its strategy and devastating in its execution. Jabari and Zuberi, the clan's most powerful males, targeted the python's tail section, using their bone-crushing jaws to grip and pull with forces exceeding 1,000 pounds per square inch. Their goal wasn't to kill the massive serpent, but to disrupt his constricting rhythm and create enough chaos to force him to release his death grip on Django. Meanwhile, Asha and Nyota employed hit-and-run tactics against Temba's midsection, darting in to deliver painful bites before retreating beyond the reach of his thrashing coils. Their attacks were calculated to inflict maximum distraction and discomfort while avoiding the python's potentially lethal retaliatory strikes. The most dangerous role fell to Kessie herself, who targeted the python's massive head with the kind of precision and courage that marked her as a truly exceptional leader. Her strategy was to disrupt Temba's ability to maintain his chokehold on Django by forcing him to defend his most vulnerable point against a coordinated assault that he had never encountered in 20 years of successful hunting. As the battle reached its most critical phase, the situation began to deteriorate in ways that threatened to turn the hyena's heroic intervention into a catastrophic failure. Temba, despite the coordinated assault against him, possessed the overwhelming advantage of size, strength, and evolutionary perfection that had made pythons apex predators for millions of years. The massive serpent's response to the hyena attack was both intelligent and terrifying. Instead of releasing Django to deal with his tormentors, Temba increased the pressure of his deadly coils while using his enormous length to simultaneously battle multiple attackers. His strategy was brutally effective. Maintain the killing grip while using his tail and middle sections as weapons against the interfering hyenas. Jabari paid the first terrible price for the clan's heroic decision. Temba's massive tail, thick as a tree trunk and powered by muscles capable of crushing bone, caught the male hyena with a devastating blow that sent him tumbling across the rocky ground. The sickening sound of impact echoed across the savanna as Jabari lay motionless, his breathing shallow and labored. Django's condition was becoming increasingly desperate. The python's relentless constriction had begun to affect his circulation and breathing, causing his struggles to weaken noticeably as oxygen deprivation took its toll. His magnificent roars had been reduced to labored gasps, and his amber eyes were beginning to dim with the approach of unconsciousness that would precede death. The hyenas themselves were showing signs of exhaustion and injury from their prolonged battle against an opponent whose hide was too thick for their teeth to penetrate effectively and whose strength was too great for their coordinated attacks to overcome. Asha had suffered deep lacerations from Temba's scales, while Zuberi's jaw showed signs of strain from his desperate attempts to maintain his grip on the serpent's writhing body. Dr. Foster's research team watched in horror as the unprecedented rescue attempt began to collapse under the overwhelming reality of evolutionary physics. The cameras that had been documenting groundbreaking animal behavior were now recording what appeared to be the inevitable failure of courage and cooperation against the brutal mathematics of predator-prey relationships. Time was running out for both the rescuers and their unlikely ally, and the African savanna seemed destined to witness another tragic reminder of nature's unforgiving laws.
Just when all hope seemed lost, Kessie's tactical brilliance created the breakthrough that would change everything. The hyena matriarch had been studying Temba's attack pattern during the prolonged battle, and her predator intelligence identified a crucial weakness in the python's seemingly impregnable strategy. While Temba focused his crushing power on Django and used his tail to fend off the other hyenas, he had left his head and neck area temporarily vulnerable. Kessie realized that if she could reach the sensitive area just behind the python's skull, the same pressure point that controlled his muscular coordination, she might be able to disrupt his entire nervous system. The maneuver required perfect timing and suicidal courage.
Kesey waited for the exact moment when Temba's attention was divided between maintaining his death grip and fighting off Zuberi's renewed assault on his midsection. Then, with the fearless determination that had made her legendary among her clan, she launched herself directly at the python's most dangerous end. Her jaws found their target with precision that would have impressed any military strategist. Kesey's teeth penetrated the vulnerable flesh behind Temba's massive skull, applying pressure to the nerve cluster that controlled the serpent's muscular coordination. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The python's entire body convulsed as his nervous system struggled to maintain control over his crushing coils. For the first time since the attack began, Temba's grip on Django began to loosen involuntarily. The lion, sensing this crucial moment of opportunity, summoned his last reserves of strength to pull against the weakening coils. His powerful legs, which had seemed useless against the python's overwhelming force, suddenly found purchase as Temba's coordination faltered. The other hyenas, recognizing their leader's success, intensified their own attacks with renewed energy and hope. Zuberi and the recovering Jabari worked together to pull at the loosened coils, while Asha and Nyota continued their harassment of the python's midsection. Temba, faced with a potentially fatal injury to his nerve center and the loss of control of his primary weapon, finally made the decision that his survival instincts demanded. The ancient predator released his death grip and began a rapid retreat toward the rocky outcroppings where his superior mobility in confined spaces might allow him to escape this unprecedented defeat.
What happened next left Dr. Foster's research team speechless and rewrote every textbook on African predator behavior. As Django lay gasping on the ground, recovering from his near-death experience, the hyena clan did something unprecedented in wildlife research. They formed a protective circle around their former rival. Cassie positioned herself closest to the weakened lion, her alert eyes scanning for any remaining threats, while her clan maintained a defensive perimeter. Instead of taking advantage of Django's vulnerability, the hyenas acted as his guardians, sharing the shade of nearby acacia trees and even bringing him access to the life-saving water he desperately needed. For over 2 hours, this extraordinary alliance continued. The hyenas refused to leave until Django had regained enough strength to stand and walk on his own. When the lion finally rose to his feet, he turned toward Kessie and performed what could only be interpreted as a gesture of acknowledgement, a slow, deliberate nod that seemed to recognize the debt he owed to these unlikely saviors. As Django limped away toward his pride's territory, the hyena clan watched until he disappeared safely into the grasslands, their mission of mercy complete.
This extraordinary rescue shattered every stereotype about predator relationships and revealed profound truths about compassion in the animal kingdom. Kessie's hyenas proved that empathy transcends evolutionary rivalry when confronted with suffering and injustice. Their willingness to risk everything for a traditional enemy demonstrated that moral reasoning exists throughout nature in ways that humble human understanding. This remarkable act of interspecies heroism shows that courage, cooperation, and compassion aren't uniquely human traits, but fundamental forces that connect all conscious beings when we choose solidarity over self-interest in the face of cruelty.
Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.